Welcome to the video presentation of Bot or Not, User Perceptions of Player Substitution with Deep Player Behavior Models. This paper was published in a 2020 CHI conference on human factors in computing systems and is accessible via the link in the video description. In this work, we try to overcome online multiplayer disruptions caused by disconnects or premature quitting by substituting dropout players with deep learning bots. These substitutions approximate the individual decision-making of the players and imitate the behavior after they disconnected. Our evaluations show that players were not able to detect that other players dropped out to change their behavior when these deep bots took over. However, they were in fact able to detect replacements when traditional heuristic bots were used. Let's start with the problem. Almost everybody that has spent a while in especially competitive online games knows that disconnecting is a serious issue. According to logs of 50 million Dota 2 games, at least one player leaves in over 11% of the matches. These issues might stem from intentional rage quitting, leaving to prevent recorded losses, or internet connection issues. Even with the continuously improving network capabilities, online gaming is still vulnerable to connectivity disruptions since fast-paced, real-time mechanics, massively large amounts of players, and vast connection distances cannot be realistically maintained 24/7. Disconnecting affects all involved parties. It is frustrating for the players who are removed from the session, it can deprive opponents of the victory, and it is unfair for team members that are left alone. The industry tackles this in various ways. Ignoring these issues arguably harms the player experience. In some games, players are punished for dropping out. While this might reduce intentional quitting, it is not quite fair for people suffering from disconnects. Eventually, some games approach the bridging of online match disruptions by substituting disconnected players with bots. However, substitution is frequently criticized since the replacing bot is usually underperforming and not able to compete with human players. While you theoretically can come up with strong bots for most video game genres, you also don't want them to outperform humans, since then people would just disconnect on purpose. Which brings us back to the old balancing question between too bad and too good. In this approach, we make a bold claim and state that the only sufficient substitution for a player is the player itself. Since we can't just magically bring them back, we are going the machine learning way and use a technique called deep player behavior modeling. DPBM records all atomic decisions of a player and establishes a mapping between game states and preferred actions so that individual behavior can be modeled and generated later. Before I go into technical details, I will show you the game environment used for the evaluations. To deliver a proof of concept for this substitution mechanic, we needed a representative game that allows for instantaneous replacement, where we can control and observe disconnects, get immediate feedback from players in-game, and that preferably is easy to learn and hard to master. Thus, we designed the 2D online platform fighting game Corona Nemesis, where players battle each other in last man standing levels by throwing elemental projectiles at their opponents. Similar to rock, paper, scissors or other commercially successful franchises, elements are strong against some elements while being dominated by others. For example, red beats green, blue beats red, and green beats blue. To make it a little more complicated, players can switch to one of 7 elements at any time. Each of these elements is superior to 2 and inferior to 2 other projectiles. Thus, players always can have choices for their preferred elements and also for their preferred way to counter an enemy's projectile. The better they become in predicting the enemy's decisions, the more likely they are to win the game. This continuous learning process of the game interactions and the individual opponent's decision making can now be reflected within the previously mentioned deep player behavior modeling. Within DPBM, every action an individual player performed is recorded together with the situation or the game state in which this action was executed. For example, a player might switch to water as he wants to counter an opponent that is currently attuned to fire. This reaction, along with the health point percentages, distance, element history, and other variables, is remembered and fed into a machine learning algorithm, in this case, multi-layer perceptrons. Once enough data could be aggregated, this network approximates the player's decision-making in similar situations and is ready to regenerate actions when a substitution is needed. For a more detailed explanation, please refer to our paper. Now the interesting part begins. To evaluate if these DPBM substitutions are really capable of representing proper replacements, we conducted an online field study over the course of 4 weeks. To keep it as ecologically valid as possible, we published the game on Steam and concealed the appearance of a scientific study until after the actual gameplay. In total, approximately 2,000 people downloaded the game, from which 312 agreed to submit their data and 24 completed an additional qualitative survey. Each match consisted of 4 players and lasted 20 rounds, but here's the twist. To control for disconnects, we purposely removed one of those players from the match after 5 to 15 rounds and substituted him with his individual DPBM bot. After the match, players were asked if one of their opponents was a bot, if the behavior of one of them changed, and so on. To not discriminate against the kicked player, he was put into a mirrored match that appeared just as the current one, but all of his opponents were substituted now. No notifications for disconnects or replacements were shown, so people were only able to spot changes through in-game character behavior. In case that players actually quitted or disconnected before this intervention, or before the individual model training was completed, these players were substituted by heuristic bots that only employed random behavior. Let's directly jump to the most important results. Unsurprisingly, the majority of human players were also thought to be human by their opponents. What's more interesting is that DPBM bots were similarly judged as human with no significant differences to the actual human players. This indicates that the approximated behavior was close to the original individual player and not distinguishable within this context. Now you could say that the game is either too easy so that behavioral differences cannot be detected, or too fast-paced so that these changes are drowned in the thrill of the fight. Yet, in the cases of heuristic bots that only showed random decision-making, people were in fact able to tell them apart from humans and detect the substitution. One reason you might think of would be that random bots might be too bad and attract attention because of this. But keep in mind that making truly random decisions leads to a strong unforeseeable agent similar to truly random decision-making in rock, paper, scissors. This successful substitution could only be ensured because of the approximation of individual atomic decision-making. DPBMs were able to correctly predict play actions with 82% accuracy on average, while training time took only about 2 seconds on the local machines. Qualitative insights include that even when a substitution was detected, no change in proficiency or predictability was perceived. We conclude that deep player behavior modeling is a viable technique to approximate individual player decision-making accurately and efficiently. Within the scope of this study, we demonstrated a mechanism for substituting disconnected players in online games that is arguably preferable to ignoring network issues, punishing players, or draw on underperforming heuristic bots. While this evaluation is limited to a testbed fighting game, similar successes and accurate player representations could already be examined in AAA MMORPGs like Lineage 2 or Aeon and academic serious games. Check the video description for more related work on DPBM. Thank you very much for your attention. If you have any questions, remarks, ideas or collaboration proposals, don't hesitate to contact me using the provided mail address.